For hundreds of thousands of years, nothing happened. Humans, if you could even call them, roamed the wild in silence. No cities, no writing, no fire, just survival. Then something changed. In the blink of an eye, Homo sapiens went from hiding in caves to building pyramids, from chipping stone tools to sending satellites into space, from primal instinct to complex civilization. And the question remains, who flipped the switch? Evolution is supposed to be slow, painfully slow. But for our species, it wasn't. We didn't gradually become intelligent. We exploded into awareness. And here's where things get strange. All over the world, ancient myths tell the same story. Different names. Différents lands. Same pattern. Beings came from the sky. They created humanity. Not out of love, not to guide us, but to use us. As workers, as tools, as slaves. They gave us life. Then they tried to wipe us out. And when that failed, they disappeared. But they left behind clues. In ancient texts, in monuments, in our DNA. This is the story of the gods who walked the earth, of those who came before us, and of the forgotten origin of mankind. Every ancient civilization speaks of gods descending from the sky, of creation, destruction, and rebirth. The Sumerians called them the Anunnaki. The Egyptians spoke of Ra and Osiris. The Hindus wrote of Vishnu and the flying Vimanas. The Mayans, the Hopi, the Chinese, the Greeks, all tell the same story. Different names, same pattern. Sky beings came to earth. They brought knowledge. They shaped humanity. And they left. But before they vanished, they warned of a great flood, a reset. And that story of water washing away the world is everywhere. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, in the Bible, in the Popol Vuh, in the stories of the Aboriginal Australians and the tribes of Africa. More than 140 cultures speak of a massive flood, a flood that came not from rain, but from the sky, the stars, or the gods themselves. How is it possible that so many civilizations, separated by oceans and centuries, remember the same event? How did they all imagine gods with wings or ships of fire? How did they all know about beings from the heavens? Maybe they didn't imagine anything. Maybe they just remembered. They called it Nibiru, the planet of crossing, a wandering world that vanishes for centuries, then reappears like a ghost in the sky. In ancient Mesopotamia, Nibiru was more than a star or a symbol. It was alive, a force that shaped destinies, that brought gods down from the heavens and flooded the earth. The Sumerians described Nibiru as a massive celestial body that followed an elongated orbit, one so vast that it only returned every 600 years, not in our sky, but through our history. Its arrival marked turning points. Civilizations collapsed. New ones rose. And always, something was lost. But what is Nibiru, really? Mainstream science once dismissed it as myth. But in 2015, astronomers at Caltech found evidence of something strange. An unknown planet, far beyond Pluto, roughly the size of Neptune, pulling on everything around it. They couldn't see it directly, but they felt its presence. Objects in the Kuiper Beltesy bodies at the edge of the solar system were moving in ways they shouldn't, as if being tugged by something massive. They called it Planet 9, and the theory matched perfectly with the ancient descriptions of Nibiru. The Anunnaki claimed it was their home. A planet once lush and advanced, now dying. Its atmosphere thinning, its climate unraveling. They needed gold, not to wear, but to survive. To suspend in the air and reflect radiation to rebuild their skies. And so, they looked outward, to the stars, to Earth. When Nibiru came close to our planet, its gravity caused chaos. Tides surged, the Earth tilted, volcanoes erupted, and the skies fell silent. Sumerian texts speak of floods and storms sent not by rain, but by the heavens themselves, by the passing of a god planet, whose very presence rewrote the laws of nature. Nibiru was not a myth to them. It was a warning, carved into stone tablets, drawn in ancient star maps, whispered through generations. Beware the crossing. It always comes back. But when? Some believe the last crossing happened around 12,000 years ago at the end of the last ice age, a time when sea levels rose suddenly, when mammoths vanished, when human history reset. If true, then Nibiru is coming again. And if the orbit holds, it will be back before the year 3000. So, what is Nibiru? A myth? A planet? A memory? Or something else? Something we're not supposed to remember. Not until it's too late. They were tall. Giants, some said. Their eyes shone like the stars. Their skin, radiant like bronze. They moved with purpose, spoke with power, and were feared like gods. The Sumerians called them Anunnaki, those who from the heavens came. But were they gods? Aliens? Or rulers of an ancient empire so advanced, we mistook them for divine? The Anunnaki appear in the earliest writings of humanity. Clay tablets from ancient Mesopotamia, dating back over 6,000 years, speak of beings who descended from the sky. They came not to observe, but to rule. According to the texts, they didn't just visit Earth. They colonized it. They built cities, created kings, and reshaped the planet to suit their needs. Each city in Sumer had its own Anunnaki overlord. Enlil ruled the winds, Enki, the waters, Ninhursag, the earth, Anu, the heavens. They governed not just as deities, but as administrators dividing regions, assigning labor, creating laws. This wasn't mythology. It was bureaucracy. The tablets speak in plain terms of contracts, trade, punishment, taxation. The Anunnaki weren't distant gods in the clouds. They were here, on the ground, managing a civilization. But why Earth? According to the Sumerians, the Anunnaki came from a planet called Nibiru. Their homeworld was dying, and Earth offered what they lacked. Gold. Not for wealth, but to heal their atmosphere. They needed miners, and they brought with them a slave race to do the work, the Igigi. But over time, the Igigi revolted. And so, the Anunnaki made a decision that would change the course of history. They would create a new slave race, one made from the creatures already living on Earth. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Who were the Anunnaki? Descriptions vary, but most agree. They were much taller than humans, some say over 12 feet tall. Their heads were elongated, their skulls larger, their lifespans tens of thousands of years. Not immortal, just ancient. Some scholars believe they were a noble class, perhaps even a breakaway civilization from a lost world. Others say they were extraterrestrial, and some believe they were us, future humans, traveling back in time to fix a broken past. But regardless of who they were, one thing is clear. They changed everything. They brought writing, mathematics, astronomy. They taught agriculture, medicine, architecture. They were the spark of civilization, and then they vanished, leaving behind temples, legends, and a species that still struggles to understand its own origins. So who were the Anunnaki? Gods? Aliens? Rulers? Time travelers? Or something else entirely? We don't know. But if the ancient texts are to be believed, they were real. And they were here. Before humans. And there were others. They were called the Igigi, beings of strength and intelligence, created by the Anunnaki to serve them. They operated the machines, tended the gardens, built the cities, and most importantly, they mined the gold. For thousands of years, they worked without rest. No reward, no future, no voice. And then, one day, they had enough. Ancient Sumerian tablets tell of a time when the Igigi rose up against their creators. They refused to dig another inch. They abandoned the mines, and they marched on the city of Enlil. The texts describe the moment with chilling simplicity. The gods' work was too hard. Their toil was heavy. Their distress was great. They gathered at night, by torchlight. Whispers turned to chants, chants to roars, and the roars became rebellion. The sky burned with fire as the Igigi stormed the gates of the Anunnaki. They smashed tools, destroyed equipment, and brought the mining operations to a halt. Enlil was furious. He wanted blood. He demanded their execution. But not all Anunnaki agreed. His brother Enki saw something different. He saw potential. The Igigi were not just slaves. They were sentient. They were evolving. And they were dangerous. But the gold still had to be mined. And the Anunnaki were not about to do it themselves. So Enki proposed a solution. A new kind of worker. One built from Earth's native species, stronger than the Igigi, more obedient, and easier to replace. This rebellion, the first of its kind, was a turning point in the story of humanity, because without it, we would never have been created. The Igigi's cry for freedom triggered a new experiment, one that would lead to the rise of Homo sapiens. Their pain became our beginning. But the Igigi didn't disappear. Some were punished, some were exiled, and some remained hidden, watching, waiting. Their rebellion echoes in our myths and tales of fallen angels, of titans cast from heaven, of beings condemned for defying the gods. They were the first to say no, and we were born from their fire. It began in a lab, hidden deep within the Anunnaki cities. A secret project was underway, a genetic experiment that would change the world forever. The mission was clear: create a new species, one that could mine the gold, follow orders, and never rebel. The Anunnaki had studied the native hominids of Earth, primitive ape-like beings roaming the forests. They walked upright, used simple tools, but lacked higher reasoning. They were strong, but not smart. The Anunnaki needed something in between, so they decided to combine them, Earth's raw biology, with Anunnaki intelligence. They began manipulating DNA, gene by gene, splice by splice, trial after trial. The first attempts were disasters. The tablets speak of monstrous results: creatures with twisted limbs, multiple heads, and minds lost to madness. These were the origins of legends, giants, chimeras, beasts of myth. But the Anunnaki didn't stop. They refined, adjusted, and tried again. And then, it worked. A child was born. He looked almost like them, but smaller, simpler, more controllable. They called him Adamu, the first man. He was followed by a female, Hea, and from them, the new race began. The Anunnaki taught them just enough: how to dig, how to carry, how to obey. Not how to question, not how to lead. The perfect worker, half divine, half earth, completely owned. But there was a problem. They couldn't reproduce. Every human had to be made, one by one, in the laboratory. Slow, costly, inefficient. So Enki and the goddess Ninhursag altered the design. They gave humans the power to multiply. Suddenly, humanity spread like wildfire, from dozens to hundreds to thousands. The cities grew. The mines flourished. The gods were pleased. Their experiment had succeeded. But something unexpected happened. The humans began to learn, to mimic, to dream. They observed their creators, watched them speak, build, rule. And slowly, the new species began to awaken. Curiosity, emotion, ambition, qualities they were never meant to have. The Anunnaki had created humanity to serve. But what they had really created was potential. And potential is dangerous, especially when it starts asking questions. They were warned. The laws were clear. Anunnaki shall not lie with humans. The creators must never mingle with the created. But laws can't stop desire. And curiosity always finds a way. The first forbidden union began in secret. An Anunnaki male, fascinated by a human woman, her eyes, her fragility, her innocence. What started as observation became affection, and affection became something deeper. The gods had made humans in their image, but they hadn't expected to fall in love with that reflection. The union resulted in a child, not fully Anunnaki, not fully human, but something else, stronger, brighter, smarter, a demigod. More unions followed. Other Anunnaki crossed the line, some out of love, some out of lust, and some out of pride. They wanted to see what their blood could become. The children of these unions became legends, warriors, kings, prophets. Their names echo through history: Gilgamesh, Samson, Hercules, Perseus. Not myths, bloodlines, but with power came consequences. The demigods were gifted, yes, but also proud, violent, ambitious. They did not see themselves as servants. They saw themselves as rulers. And why wouldn't they? They were born of gods. As their numbers grew, so did the chaos. Kingdoms rose too quickly. Battles spread across the land. The balance the Anunnaki had built was unraveling. The experiment was breaking. Even worse were the unions between humans and the Igigi, the first slave race. These offspring were not demigods. They were monsters, giants, brutes, ruthless and cruel. They became known as the Nephilim, destroyers of men, eaters of flesh. Terror in the ancient world. The Anunnaki had lost control. Their slaves had become too human, their children too powerful, their bloodline too mixed. And so, a decision was made. A reset was coming. And this time, not everyone would survive. It began with silence. No wind, no birds, no sound, just a stillness, as if the earth itself was holding its breath. Then came the rumble, deep, low, distant, a sound that didn't travel through the air but through the ground. The sky darkened, the oceans rose, and the gods unvanished. According to the ancient texts, the decision had been made. Humanity had become unstable, violent, unpredictable. The demigods were uncontrollable. The Nephilim were destroying everything. The earth, once a project of promise, had turned into chaos. And so, the Anunnaki chose to cleanse it, not with fire, but with water. The tablets say Enlil, Lord of Command, gave the order. The skies would open, the fountains of the deep would burst, and the flood would erase everything. But not everyone agreed. Enki, the creator of humanity, protested. He had grown attached to the humans. He saw hope where others saw failure. So he made a secret pact with one man. His name was Utnapishtim, a wise man, a good man. Enki whispered to him in a dream, "Build an ark. Take your family. Take the seed of every living thing. The storm is coming." Utnapishtim obeyed. The flood came suddenly. Waves taller than mountains crushed the cities. Temples crumbled. Fires were drowned. The air itself became water. The Anunnaki watched from above, safe in their ships, orbiting the planet they once ruled. Below them, the world ended. This story isn't unique. It appears in the Epic of Gilgamesh, in the Hebrew Bible, in Hindu scriptures, in Native American legends, in stories told across Africa, Asia, and the Pacific. More than 140 cultures remember a great flood, not as myth, but as memory. When the waters receded, Utnapishtim's ark came to rest on a mountain. From there, humanity began again. But this time, things were different. The gods had learned their lesson. They made changes. They shortened human lifespans, made childbirth painful, weakened our bodies, erased much of what we had known. Civilization would have to start over, from stone, from scratch, from silence. But somewhere in our blood, in our bones, we still remember. The day the earth drowned, and the gods let it happen. They stand in silence, alone, forgotten, but unbroken. Massive stones, carved with precision, aligned with the stars, placed in ways modern machines can barely replicate. They are the ruins that shouldn't exist. Göbekli Tepe, 12,000 years old at least, built before writing, before agriculture, before cities. A temple complex buried in southeastern Turkey, with carvings of animals that no longer roam the earth. Pillars weighing tons, arranged in perfect circles, astronomically aligned, engineered with knowledge no hunter-gatherer should have had. According to mainstream history, it's impossible. But there it is. And Göbekli Tepe is just the beginning. Pumapunku, in Bolivia. Blocks of stone weighing over 100 tons, scattered like toy bricks. Each one cut with angles and channels so precise, they resemble modern machine tools. Yet there's no record of how they were built. No tools, no scaffolding, just silence. Baalbek, in Lebanon, home to the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, a single megalith weighing over 10 tons. Modern cranes can't lift it. Ancient texts don't explain it. And yet, it was moved, positioned, perfectly. Who did this? And why? Mainstream archaeology offers guesses, slaves, ramps, centuries of effort. But the precision, the alignment with constellations, the technology required, none of it adds up. Not for the time, not for the tools, not for the people, unless someone helped them. The legends say the gods taught men to build, to stack stone upon stone, to reach for the heavens. The Anunnaki, in Sumer, the Viracochas, in South America, the sky beings, in Australia, the shining ones, in Egypt. Different names, same story. Beings who came from above, shared knowledge, then left, but their fingerprints remain. In the cracks of ancient walls, in the impossible angles of ancient temples, in ruins that defy logic and rewrite history. We call them mysteries. But maybe they're not. Maybe they're memories carved in stone. It's the code that defines us. 3 billion letters long, hidden in every cell, passed down through every generation. DNA, the blueprint of life. For years, scientists believed our intelligence came from the size of our brains. But that theory has a problem. Neanderthals had brains just as big as ours, sometimes bigger. They created tools, made art, buried their dead. But they didn't build civilizations, didn't write music, didn't reach the stars. So what makes us different? In 2020, scientists at the Max Planck Institute discovered something strange. A gene. Small, unassuming, but critical. It's called TKT-lone. This gene controls how fast brain cells neurons are produced in the developing embryo. Homo sapiens carry a unique version of it. A single mutation. One tiny difference. One amino acid. That none of our ancestors had. Not Neanderthals. Not Denisovans. Not Homo erectus. Just us. And that mutation changes everything. It causes our brains to develop differently, faster, denser, more complex. It's like a switch was flipped. Suddenly, we were inventing language, creating maps, telling stories, from survival to imagination. But here's the question. Where did that mutation come from? It didn't evolve slowly. It didn't come from crossbreeding. It just appeared, perfectly placed, perfectly timed, like someone inserted it. This isn't science fiction. It's science. We now have the technology to make this kind of change, to edit genes, to manipulate DNA. So the real question is, who had that technology? 300 years ago? Ancient texts say the Anunnaki created man by mixing their essence with the creatures of earth, blood, and clay, spirit, and soil. The Bible says God made Adam in his image. The Sumerians called the first human Adamu, born in a lab, created with purpose. Maybe those stories aren't metaphors. Maybe they're descriptions. Maybe that gene, the one mutation that made us human, is the signature of our creators. A silent code, buried deep in our biology. Whispering the truth, you were designed. They came from the stars. They walked among us, taught us how to build, how to write, how to rule. They were gods to us. But what if they were just ahead? The Anunnaki were powerful, yes, but not immortal, not magical, just advanced. They had technology beyond our understanding. But now, we're catching up. In just the last 100 years, we've done what took them millennia. We've split the atom, cloned life, decoded the genome, connected the entire world through invisible signals, launched machines into deep space. We're editing DNA, building artificial minds, designing life from scratch. We are, in every sense of the word, becoming gods. But this raises a disturbing question. What if this has all happened before? What if the Anunnaki weren't aliens from another star but us, a previous version of humanity, a forgotten civilization that reached the stars, then fell? Maybe they escaped a dying Earth. Maybe they altered their genes to survive. Maybe they returned home one day to find the planet reset, empty, pristine, primitive. And so, they began again, from above. Every myth tells of gods who resemble us, who feel love, jealousy, anger, who age, who bleed. Not divine, just different, just ahead. And maybe that's what awaits us. One day, we may leave Earth, colonize Mars, terraform moons, upload our minds, shape new species. We may look back at our origins and decide to start over, recreate life, control evolution, make others in our image, like gods, just like they once did. So maybe the story of the Anunnaki is not just our past. Maybe it's our future. Because if power repeats itself, then so does the cycle. And maybe, just maybe, we were always destined to become what we feared the most. What if every myth was a memory? What if the gods of old weren't gods at all but beings of flesh and thought, power and knowledge, who came and never truly left? What if the ruins we ignore, the texts we mistranslate, and the stories we call legends are fragments of a truth too big to face? What if we weren't born here, but made here? What if the reason we've always looked to the stars is because we remember, somewhere deep in our cells, in dreams, in instinct, we remember the sky gods, the war in heaven, the flood, the fire, the moment we opened our eyes and saw them looking back. Maybe they'll return, or maybe they're already here, watching, waiting, or maybe they never left. And maybe one day, we'll finally understand what they wanted, what they feared, and what they became. because we're becoming it too. We are not just witnesses to the story. We are the continuation of it. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, and if this journey through time and truth has opened your mind, until next time, time explorers, keep looking up, because the sky never forgets.